Scamera and wingman John Scanlon brake hard left as the sky erupts into a blazing curtain of tracer rounds.
From there on, it was just a big dogfight, one plane after another.
A zero appears off Scamera's nose. The P-51D is among the first aircraft equipped with a lead computing gun sight, the gyroscopic K-14.
You're supposed to know the wingspan. You guessed 37 feet or whatever. You punch that in, and it was supposed to self-lead it. So all you do is put the dot on the plane.
Scamera's gun sight makes it so a quick burst is all he needs. The wounded Zero limps from the fight. Then, Scamera spots two Japanese N-1K fighters, nicknamed Georges, at 9 o'clock low. The N-1K was the most advanced Japanese fighter, posing a real threat to any American in the sky. The George has harder-hitting cannons, but the Mustang has the edge in speed and altitude. Scamera wings over into a dive. The Mustangs bore into the attack. June 23rd, 1945. In the midst of a deadly furball, Lieutenant Bob Scamera and wingman John Scanlon are closing fast on a pair of Japanese George fighters.
I said, if that situation happens, there's two planes, I'll head for the leader, you head for his number two man. Well, I was closing in on the leader, and he wasn't shooting at the wingman.
Scamera unleashes a torrent of hot lead on the enemy wingman.
He dove down, and I took off after the leader. And I caught him in nothing flat and shot him down.
Splash 2 for Scamera. His strategy is to strike fast and move often.
I made short bursts because one thing, I didn't want to burn up my guns, and the other thing, I didn't have to because the Japanese planes weren't armored, and they were easy to shoot down. There was no problem there.
Scamera engages several more Japanese fighters, damaging 3.
Seemed like every place I pointed, there was a Japanese plane. It just didn't take much maneuvering to get from one to the other.
But suddenly, tracers streak over his canopy. A Ki-84 Frank, the fastest fighter in the Japanese arsenal, is diving from 6 o'clock high. Scamera brakes hard left. The Frank pilot's mistake is going too fast. He overshoots, pulling up into a climb. Scamera reverses and pitches up, straining to put the Pipper on target.
I remember pulling up, and here was that gun sight was down on my cowling, and I couldn't get enough lead on him, so I practically stalled out.
Scamera manages a short burst before he's forced to dive away. The burning Japanese fighter plummets right past his nose. Splash 3. Scamera scans the sky once more.
I thought one Japanese plane was out ahead of me. As soon as he seen me coming, he split S over and dove for the ground. Well, I shouldn't have done it, but I followed.
Scamera dives after the lone Oscar, but he begins to worry about his fuel state.
Well, I said, heck with him, and I said, let him go. And I pulled back up, using my airspeed to gain as much altitude as I could.
After all the maneuvering, the other Americans are nowhere to be seen. Scamera is alone. Then he catches sight of something off his left wing.
That's when I noticed Scanlon was still on my wing. I hadn't noticed that up till that time.
Incredibly, Scamara's wingman has stuck with him through every twist and turn. Scamara decides to head to the rally point.
I put him out on mutual support, which you don't talk to, you wiggle your tail and away he goes, and he flies about a quarter mile parallel to you. So he can watch my tail, I can watch his tail.
They don't get far before Scamara spots trouble behind Scanlon. A zero right on his tail.
I turned toward him, but I couldn't make it. I yelled at him over the radio to do something. There's a Japanese plane coming down your tail.
But it's too late. The Zero's 20mm cannons pummel Scanlon's wings. They burst into flames.
He jettisoned his canopy and he bailed out because his cockpit must have been pretty hot by then.
Scamara circles his wingman's parachute, shooting at any Japanese planes that come within gun range.
But I kept firing at them, keeping them clear, and pretty soon 4 of my guns went blank. 2 of them were still firing, but that's 2 of them had maybe 100 rounds more than the other 4.
There's nothing more he can do for his wingman. Scamara breaks off and heads for home. He lands back on Iwo Jima after 8 hours and 17 minutes with 6 empty guns. Remarkably, his internal fuel tank still has 54 gallons of fuel. Scamara is credited with 3 kills and 4 damaged. Tragically, John Scanlon would not make it home alive.
Maybe 3 years later that I happened to notice this little article in the newspaper, 2 or 3 women that were acquitted of war crimes. And their war crime was releasing Scanlon from the infirmary to a civilian mob that was demanding them to release him to them. Well, they released him to him and they lynched him. And that's how I found out what happened to him. I'd have gladly given him back their 3 victories just if I could have saved John, but it didn't happen that way.
The Mustang made a significant contribution to the Allied victory in the Pacific, sweeping the skies of most Japanese fighters that threatened American bombers. Meanwhile, in Europe, Mustang pilots were among the first to take on the Third Reich's most menacing wonder weapon, the jet fighter. April 7, 1945. A lone P-51 Mustang soars above a large formation of B-24 bombers, droning into the German heartland. The Mustang pilot, Lieutenant Richard Candelaria, is the first to arrive on station above the bombers. The rest of the squadron is lost in thick cloud cover below.
I had gotten to the rendezvous point about 3 or 4 minutes before the rest of the squadron got there. They said we'll be there in 2 or 3 minutes.
Candelaria keeps his eyes outside the cockpit, scanning the sky. The D-model Mustangs featured a bubble-type canopy that greatly improved visibility over previous models.
With the D model, you can look all over the place. You have great visibility because the radar of a Mustang is your eyes.
At 7 o'clock low, the young lieutenant spots something.
First I saw what looked like specks getting bigger, and then I realized they were Me-262s because they were coming fast. I'd seen them before, I had chased them before, but had never been able to catch one.
The Me-262 is the world's first operational jet fighter. It's a quantum leap in technology that points to the future of air combat.